Hello everyone and welcome to the next big classical event after the World Chess Championship. It is the Superbet Chess Classical Tournament being played in the Grand Hotel in Bucharest in Romania. These are the gentlemen that will be participating in this great event. From left to right you have the locals, Bogdan Daniel Deac and Richard Rapport. Then you have Dean Liren, the newly crowned world champion. Then the World Chess Championship challenger, Yanni Pomneši. Alireza Firuja is making his return back from fashion. Anish Giri, Fabiano Caruana, there's Wesley So, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, and of course young Krzysztof Duda. And if you guys are wondering how Ding's first classical game as World Chess Champion went, it was a draw against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. So we'll see what happens in today's round as, he will also get to play Yanni Pomneši once again after the World Chess Championship match, so I'm sure everyone is very eager to see that. Rapport, who was Ding's second for the World Chess Championship match, actually faced Yanni Pomneši and they drew their game. It was a very nice one. I decided to show this one. It's really a wild one, and also here is a nice photo of Garry Kasparov. He managed to snatch a photo with the newly crowned world champion Ding Liren. So let's enjoy that for a second, and now let's dive into the game. So like I said, this is the first event of the 2023 Grand Chess Tour. $350,000 is the total prize. First place will get you $100,000, and as you've seen, it's a pretty strong field, missing only the former world champion Magnus Carlsen. So let's see how it went. Here Alireza has the white pieces and he opens with e4. We have e5 by Wesley, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to c4. We have bishop to c5. The Italian game is on the board, the gioco piano now, and Alireza goes for pawn to d3. The gioco pianissimo variation, we have d6, c3, and now bishop to b6. This is a very rare continuation, going bishop to b6 right away. Usually players will just continue with knight to f6 or h6, but okay, Wesley has a very particular idea in mind. Castles, we have h6, and now knight b to d2. And already we are pretty much in completely unexplored territory. There are a few games that reach this position where queen to f6 was played. Also knight g to e7 is a known move. But Wesley plays knight to f6, and it is now already, as of move 7, that we have a completely new game. So let's see how it continues. Bishop to b3. We have pawn to a5, of course preparing pawn to a4, and now just rook to e1. You want to have your e4 pawn sufficiently defended if at some point you want to execute d4, and of course this knight is coming to c4. So here castles with pawn to h3, all very standard moves. Bishop to e6, and Alireza trades. Bishop captures, f captures. Wesley doubles his pawns here, but it's not really an issue. These structures are very well known, and you know that you can make use of all of these squares that you control here. So knight to c4, now attacking the bishop, also putting pressure on the e5 pawn. This also prevents black from executing d5 because the e5 pawn would hang. So just bishop back to a7, and now bishop to e3, offering a trade of dark square bishops. We have bishop captures on e3, rook captures. You could also consider f captures, you could consider knight captures, but Alireza doesn't want to do anything drastic, and also maybe you can get some attacking chances here if the knight moves. Maybe the rook can come to g3, who knows. So pawn to a4. In the future you might also be looking at a move like a3 to mess up Alireza's pawn structure here, and Alireza has to decide what to play. Does he push d4 right away, or can he somehow improve his position before going for this d4 move? You could try with something like rook to c1, but then b5 comes, and already it's maybe black who's dictating the tone of the battle. Let's say rook to b8, and now you will get that d4 move in, but your knight is no longer on c4, and now black can also play something like d5. Then we'd see d captures on e5, knight captures on e4. c4, very important, as the e4 pawn, e4 knight would be hanging if you capture with the e pawn. So b captures on c4, knight captures, and now let's say knight e7, and the game continues with black having some potential c5, d4 ideas in the future. So that's why Alireza went for d4 right away. E captures on d4, c captures, and now just pawn to d5. Now it's possible as the e5 pawn is no longer hanging. So e captures on d5, we have e captures on d5, and knight back to d2. Queen to d6 now, and here pawn to a3. Very nicely done, stopping that knight to b4 idea, but also leaving some holes here, because now if the knight comes to a5, but then comes to b3, then to c4, could also be very, very hard to deal with. So Wesley first goes for bishop to queen to f4. He puts pressure on the d4 pawn, prevents developing moves. So again, the only way to defend the pawn is to move the knight to b1, which is what Alireza does. Knight to e4, and now just knight to c3. We have knight captures on c3, and now Alireza doesn't capture with the b pawn. If you capture with the b pawn, then knight a5 is very strong. You can't play queen captures because knight c4 will expose the queen and also attack the rook on e3. So you're just waiting for knight to b3 or knight to c4, which will be those will be some excellent squares for black. So that's why rook captures on c3. This also prevents the knight from moving because the c7 pawn would hang, and Wesley goes back queen to d6. Sort of a waiting move, but also in some tricky lines, it prevents a move like rook to c5, because then you might even capture on d4 as the rook will be undefended. Not while the queen is on d1, obviously, but you know, you still have to struggle to find some moves. So rook to c1, and now rook to f7. Nicely defending the c7 pawn. We have rook 1 to c2. Adding more support to the second rank, and now rook to f4. Alireza shifts his attention to the d4 pawn. Rook to e3. Now Alireza wants to double up on the e file. We have queen to f6, and now rook to d3. Adding another defender here as Wesley's putting pressure on that d4 pawn. Rook to e8, and now rook to c5. Putting pressure on the d5 pawn. Queen to d6. Rook back to c3, and now rook f to e4. Now this is how with some maneuvering, Wesley manages to double up rooks on the e file. g3, we have rook to e2, and now rook to d2. Wesley trades, captures, and now queen to g6. Pretty much looking for that b1 square, and if queen to b1 check lands, could be very annoying, but Alireza even invites it. Wesley does play queen to b1, and now rook to c1, just chasing the queen away, because you can't really do all that much. The knight can't move, you allow rook to e1, so the queen has to be kicked away. Rook to c1, we have queen back to f5, rook to c3, and we have a repetition. Queen to b1, but now h4. Alireza declines the repetition. He wants to play on. Rook to e7, now rook to c1. Kicks the queen back, queen f5, and now queen to d1. And this is basically the star move of the game. Here, it's kind of equal. You could just repeat moves, rook d1, rook to c1, and nothing is really happening. By playing queen to d1, you are saying, okay, I'm going to win the a4 pawn. There is no way Wesley can defend the a4 pawn because of b5, the knight on c6 hangs, but it also gives up the crucial g5 square, the control of the crucial g5 square, and that's exactly what Wesley has to do in order to try and make something of this game. So he plays it, pawn to g5. Now let's see what Alireza had in mind here. H captures, and now queen back to d2, just threatening to pick up on g5. Pawn to g4, now knight h4, attacking the queen, and queen to e4 with check. We have king to h2, and now queen captures on d4. So Alireza is now down a pawn, but he has queen to g5 check, rook to g7, and now queen to f5. Can he do something with this? Can he do some checks? Can he maybe bring the knight to f5, put some pressure on the queen and the rook? Well, rook to f7, queen to g5, and now king to f8. Now it's Wesley who declines the repetition here. And now the problem is if you continue the attack, let's say knight to g6, you can go king 8, and even if rook to e1 check, you play king to d7. There's no way to continue the attack. You would love to play knight to e5. It's just that the knight from c6 just controls that square, so there's no way to do it. Even if you prepare it with something like rook to c1, hoping to capture, the f2 pawn is hanging. You're going to get checkmated, so there's just no time. So instead, king to h1, now queen or rook captures on f2 will not come with check, but Wesley doesn't rush it. He plays queen to e4 check first, king to g1, and now king to e8. He just wants to bring his king to safety and enjoy his position being up a pawn. We have queen to d2, now comes rook to e7. We have rook to d1, attacking the pawn, but now pawn to d4. And here with this move, Wesley says, my d4 pawn is defended by the knight. There is no counterplay here. You're just down a pawn, and you will have to suffer for the rest of the game. So queen to g5, we have knight to e5, now going for that f3 square, and queen back to d2. The knight is guarding the f3 square, so you don't have to worry all that much, but you still have to worry. Pawn to d3, just nicely defending that passed pawn. Queen to f4, and here Wesley plays queen captures on f4, which is a mistake. Here you could actually win quite easily with queen to e2. Point is that now the rook is hanging, and you have to deal with that. You're probably gonna move the rook or play queen to d2. It doesn't really matter what you do, because now there's rook to h7. This is the other star move of the game, although in a position that never occurred. And now you don't really have a move. Rook captures on h4 is coming, followed by knight to f3 check. And even if you trade queens, it doesn't matter. D captures, attacks the knight, and once the rook goes to e1, you still play knight f3 check. Now you either lose the rook or you trade here, and there's no playing this. It's game over. So very weird for Wesley to go for this queen captures on f4 move, but okay, he had an idea. G captures on f4, knight to c4, and now rook captures on d3, knight captures on b2, and rook to c3. So it does seem like he gave Alireza some counterplay here. Rook to d7, we have king to g2, and now knight to d3. So still, okay, you're up a pawn. Alireza will still have to fight very hard for a draw. King to g3, defends the f4 pawn. Pawn to c5 now. And now, once pawn to c5 was played, you know what's coming. Once you see this move, you know what's coming. Up until this point, you felt that you probably had some drawing chances, but now you can see b5, b4 on the board, and, well, it either works or it doesn't. There's nothing you can do here. So king captures on g4, pawn to b5. Knight to f5 by Alireza, king to f7 now. We have king to g5, and now rook to d5, not allowing the knight to move. We have rook to c2, and now knight to e1, attacking the rook. And Alireza played rook to c3 here. Rook to e2 seems like a move you want to play, attacking the knight and going for rook to e7. The problem is it still doesn't work. Even this would fail. For example, knight to f3 check, king g4, and now rook captures on f5. That's the problem. Now if you capture the rook, then knight to d4 check picks up the rook, and if you capture the knight, then b4 comes. And okay, now what do you want to do? If rook e4, you're just going to play b3. If rook captures on a4, you're hoping to get this check in, and then rook b7 kind of defends the pawn, attacks the pawn and prevents it from promoting. But now king g6, the only winning move. Rook to a7, now you're going to play c4, and now those pawns are too strong. Rook to b7, rook to c5, you will now advance the pawn. King to e2, c3, king to d1, you will play c2 with check, king to c2, and now rook c3. You defend the pawn, also you're threatening rook d3, followed by rook to d1 check, and that's it. There's no surviving this. So that's why even with top engine play, you'd have a very hard time saving this. Alireza played a different line. He played rook to c3. Now comes knight to d3. And now rook back to c2, defending the pawn here, but now pawn to b4. Wesley waited as long as possible to execute this b4 move, but now it comes just at the right moment. A captures on b4, c captures, now rook to c7 with check, king to e8, and now king to f6. The sneakiest of moves by Alireza, because now if Wesley just continues pushing pawns, as many of us would, knight g7 check. King goes here, knight to e6 check, king goes here, and now rook to e7 checkmate. You don't want to mess up your advantage like this. So, of course, Wesley spots this. He plays king to d8. Now comes rook to a7, puts pressure on the pawn, but just pawn to b3. Wesley shows that if you capture the pawn, pawn b2, and the b4 and a1 squares are covered, you cannot take that, you cannot stop that pawn from promoting. So knight to e3 was played, but now rook to d6 with check, king to f5, and pawn to b2. We have rook to b7, stopping the pawn, just rook to d4 now. The b2 pawn is defended, you're going to capture the f4 pawn, you're going to capture the f2 pawn. So the principle of many weaknesses, if you will. Knight to c2, and now rook captures on f4 with check, king to g5, and rook captures on f2. Attacks the knight. Alireza played knight to a3, but here just rook to f1, and he was in this position on move 72 that Alireza Firuza resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So really a wild game where neither player was satisfied with a draw. There were some repetitions, but first Alireza declined the draw, then Wesley declined the draw, and they just wanted to play. They wanted to keep the game going. There were many ways to keep the game going, and Alireza just chose one that was too difficult to hold. So here the point is, after king to g6, you're just going to play rook to a1, kick away the knight from the defense of the b1 square, and that's it. There's no way. Once the knight moves, you're going to queen the pawn, and that's it. So basically, a lot has happened in this game, but basically once Alireza played this queen to d1 move and put pressure on the a4 pawn, this is the moment the game completely shifted, and it was all Wesley in the driver's seat from this point on. Even though it was very scary, he had to do a lot of king walking, but that's what you have to do in order to beat a former 2800 player like Alireza. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. First game that we're showing from the Superbet Chess Classic round 1. We'll see what happens in the other ones. All the other games from round 1 were drawn. I'm gonna go through them and see if some interesting positions happen, so we might show another one. But basically we are now looking at round 2 of Superbet Chess Classic, so we'll see what happens and what exciting games happen in that round. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I would like to thank Wesley Carter, Mark Burzakaki, Keith Tester, Edmund Freeman, and Evan Bursey for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Superbet Chess Classic until it finishes. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Sunday.